Hey everyone, this is SM Pratt, and today we're going to talk about autographed cards. Signed Pokemon cards are so hot right now. I've said for the past few years, I think that they're a new emerging market, especially right now in 2022. There's a ton of interest. But what's interesting is that signed Pokemon cards are very new. I would say majority of the cards you see on the market were probably signed within the past 5 to 6 years. Prior to that, it was like some super peripheral thing that like me and maybe 5 other people who cared way too much about Pokemon were interested. But overall, it's just a natural progression of an established collectible. I think it's just cool to have a connection with the card, a moment in time, more of a history or an added layer of history, especially if you get signed in person. You know, there's this added layer of sentimentality. So it's a natural thing that happens all the time in other markets. And it's just newer in Pokemon. I think this Mickey Mantle ball is a good contrast, where in sports, you have stuff going back decades and centuries, and that ball was signed before Pokemon was even a sparkle in Sugimori's eye, before it was even conceptualized. So this is nothing new. It's just newer for Pokemon. Now, what is a signed Pokemon card? On the surface, it sounds super simple. It's a card typically signed by the artist. But in my opinion, I think signed cards have the biggest barrier to entry. There's a ton of variability. There's a ton of knowledge that's necessary to navigate the signed market. So first is going to be the actual card itself. What's the card? Is it rare? Is it popular? Is it an energy card? In this case, it's a first edition base set Blastoise, signed by the artist Ken Sugimori. If anything, I think this is one end of the spectrum. I would actually go out on a limb and say this is probably the holy grail right now, or one of the holy grails of Sugimori signed cards, because not only is it a super popular high-octane item, it also is signed by one of the most difficult artists who is so reclusive. Like, he makes me in the grandma house and Mewtwo in the cave look like social Butterfrees. Like, he is absolutely one of the most difficult artists to get a signature from, plus the fact that he's the godfather. Like, it's Sugimori. He did the original designs, like that Game Boy strategy guide back there, the art that we grew up with, that's Ken Sugimori. So he's one of the most prolific artists, and he's extremely tough to get. Naturally, what's that going to create? A high price premium. And it's not unique to Pokemon. If you hop over the fence to sports, you take people like Michael Jordan, who are at the top of their game, or other athletes that are just as legendary. If you combine that with infrequent signings, it's naturally going to yield a higher premium. And that's what's interesting about autographs, is you can have people like Arita who are right up there with Sugimori as far as legacy is concerned, but Arita does more autographs. So naturally, that's going to bring the price down. You know, anybody who's a baseball fan, one of the big Cardinal contrasts I can think of is Stan Mikita, legend, signed a ton of items, but Albert Pujols, who's also a Cardinals legend, his autograph is worth more, even though he's living too, which is another variable, which I hate to acknowledge, but it is a thing. So Stan Mikita is someone who would just sign anything, and Albert Pujols signs less frequently. So that's why Pujols, on average, is going to be worth more. And you had that in Pokemon too. So not only is it the card itself and how rare it is, but also the artists and how established they are, and more importantly, how frequently they sign. That frequency there is extremely important to understanding autograph values, because you might have moments when, let's say, a reader, someone who signs more frequently, you might have a card that might appear down the road when he does another signing, but has a dry spell, where with Sugimori, it's always a dry spell. It's always dry because the dude just doesn't sign. So that's a general breakdown. Now, there's other variables here to understand when you're trying to get into the autograph market. All these autographs you see around me aren't personalized. And that's because, again, back in the day, it was one of maybe 5 to 10 people who were really doing this stuff. So back then, there wasn't a personalization. There was no need to do that. Where today, that's one of the standards you're going to see at most of these signings, because there is this huge market now. There's a lot of people trying to make money. A lot of the flippers want to get in there. A lot of the scalpers want to attach their bots to it. So now it has to be designated to SM Pratt, to whoever, whatever you want to put there, to trainer or collector or Charizard, whatever cringe thing people try to do to maneuver the personalization. But that's a new variable as well that you have to deal with, is that majority of these autographs today are going to be personalized. Another one, no more unsanctioned sketches. Those days are long gone. Back in the day, you might be able to get that little Pikachu face on there. You might be able to get a little sketch or something on there, but unless Pokemon specifically sanctions it, and usually it's going to be paired with the personalization, it's not going to happen. It's so strict now that some of these new artists, their contracts explicitly say, no friends and family sketches. If little Jimmy or Timmy wants a little sketch of Pikachu, sorry, Daddy Pokemon said no, and Sauron will see it. they will see it and try to nuke it. So that is another barrier, is that you can't just get the sketches or the detail that you could before in the past as freely. It's a lot more strict. And I think another data point here is at Worlds in London, you couldn't even get cards signed. They said, forget it, no cards, just posters. Like, that's how it's gotten now. It's gotten to a point where Pokemon is highly attuned to the secondhand market. Also, Japanese artists in general are a lot more, they're like legendary Pokemon. It's one of those things where if you do any little thing different in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable, they're out. They'll just dip. They're like, we're good. We don't need to sign this. Like, these artists do not play. If there's something here they don't like, they just leave. Where in sports, a nice contrast, you know, especially for cross collectors watching, you can go, I know a guy who wasn't even like an upper deck, wasn't even like a business, just a dude with excess capital who went and sat down with one of these new rookies and said, I'll give you $500,000 to sign all this memorabilia. Did it. Signed it, made money, everybody was happy. That will never happen in Pokemon. You can't just come in and throw down money and expect, you know, all these artists to just start signing stuff. Because again, Pokemon is so involved, which I think takes us to the final point here, which is kind of a video in a video. Why I think signatures are so much fun and why they're so popular today is not only because they're fresh, but they can't be optimized. You know, they can't be ruined and penetrated by Team Rocket's Meowth balloon. You know, it's one of those things that scalpers can't do. It's really tough to optimize. And to give you an idea, it's not like just going to the store, tossing a couple ETBs in, snapping a photo, flipping it online. You got to buy a ticket. You got to get a hotel room. You got to go wait in line or wait at this event just to get your personalized signed card and then come back home. So if you're going to the event, you're easily spending close to $1,000 just to get your card signed. This is all time, money, work, effort. It's something that is not easy to do. And those middlemen and all that stuff that used to happen, you know, early on in the early days of signatures, it's a high uphill climb now. It's a lot harder. So the bottom line is this is a market that you just cannot throw down with money or connections or whatever it is. It just doesn't work. It's not something that is easy to optimize. It's probably one of the hardest parts of Pokemon to optimize outside of obnoxious rare cards or, you know, the rarity chase. It's one of those things, again, like with Sugimori, what are you going to do? How do you get Sugimori to sign a card when he hasn't signed in ages? How do you do that? Like, let me know. Slide in my DMs. I really want to know. You know, it's one of those things that is just not something you could do. It's not there. It's not a retail product. You know, the 420 Blazikens or just Blaziken 420s can't come in and, you know, just bot it out like they can with the delivery Charizards. You can't get hundreds of codes and buy hundreds of special delivery Charizard autograph equivalents. It's not a thing. You know, all this stuff is signed at a specific place at a specific time that you have to pay money to go to. It takes so much effort. Even if you had a buddy or a friend that would do it for you, you know, that's a very, very, very rare exception, a very nice person at this point especially, you know, because again, it takes so much time, effort, and capital to do this. It's not product. It's not something you just go out and throw down. If you have excess money and, you know, whatever it is, you can't hashtag your way out of it. You know, there's no way to do it. So that's why I think autographs are so fun. And I think more importantly, why they are at one of these hot, interesting, fresh things right now is because that flame keeps burning because Team Rocket can't come in there and scalp it away. You know, it's just one of those things that you can't optimize, no matter who you are. If you take me, Gary, whatever it is, all the pseudo Z-list, triple Z-list celebrities in the hobby, and you put them together, it's not going to matter. Like, these artists don't care. That's not going to bring Sugimori out of the cave. So hopefully I paint that picture as clear as possible because it's one of the most difficult barrier to entry parts of Pokemon, which is why I think it is so fun and organic. Again, with sports, you can have people to just throw down. Like if me and Gary went up to one of these athletes anywhere in a hotel and said, we'll give you whatever money to do this, it can happen. That'll never happen in Pokemon. At least it hasn't in the past 26 years. Again, if you know how to get a hold of Sugimori, just slide in those DMs real quick. Just let me know. Because it's one of those things that you just can't optimize. And that's why I think it ends up being this nice, contained, kind of preserved market where you can enjoy it and have this connection, again, of like this added layer of, oh, it's cool, Sugimori signed this card at one point. You know, it adds this layer literally and figuratively to your collectible and in a nice organic way. Because it is contained. The benefit of Pokemon being Sauron is that they just will keep it this way, you know, for the foreseeable future. So that's the current state of autographs. Again, there's a lot of variability. The card you get signed, how rare it is, the signer themselves. Is it personalized? Does it have a little Pikachu face on it? There's so much variables here. So many. And I would say at a point where, you know, a lot of people who are used to rarities of like alt art, hyper rare, that's just not a thing. You know, maybe you can plug it in and say, okay, Sugimori is like a trophy of autographs, and even then, it's very abstract, it's very fluid. You know, if Sugimori all of a sudden just has a mid to late life crisis and says, screw it, I just want to ball out of control and sign a bunch of cards, that's the reality. That's what you're left with. But, you know, it's one of those things that has a lot of variables. Even the morbid thing about people who pass away and people who are still living, I hate it. I hate to acknowledge it, but it's another one of those variables that comes into play. You know, a lot of these athletes, we saw with Kobe, when that tragedy happened, his autograph just 10x'd overnight because whatever's out there is all that remains, you know? So that is one of the, like, other variables here that comes into play. It's a very fluid thing. And with Pokemon, it's nice and contained. I think for the reasons mentioned, that's why it's going to remain to be this really fun, fresh, you know, organic part of the hobby. So there it is. As usual, guys, let me know how you feel about all this. I know autographs are one of those hot items right now, and I have fun with it. I'm going to try to go to some of these events and, you know, just hang out with people while we wait for our cards to be signed. But it's one of those things I think is here to stay. I think it's just a new part of an established collectible. Again, it's been in all these other markets for ages. It's just newer in Pokemon, but I think it's even better in Pokemon because you can't just go and open up a briefcase of money to get cards signed. So there it is. You know the deal. Let me know how I feel. It's pretty much it. Till next time.